Hello, everyone. Welcome to session 2 of the 3 sessions on mindful eating and stress management. I would like to start this session by doing what I call a check-in meditation. And basically, the idea here is that when I do my program of 8 sessions, each session at the beginning, we always do this check-in. And the idea is basically that what we want to do is calm ourselves down. We want to be more present. And what tends to happen is there's a momentum that precedes this moment of stress. And we want to diminish that level of stress so that we could be more receptive and present to what's happening now and enjoy the moment more. So we always do a check-in. And you could do a check-in meditation at any time. When you get in your car, before you turn the engine on, take a breath or two. Just settle yourself down. Of course, when you sit down to eat, it's very important. Take a breath or two. Okay? Some people like to say grace before dinner. That's a wonderful way of grounding ourselves in the moment and getting out of our heads. Okay? When you sit down on the couch to watch TV, before you turn the remote on, take a breath or two. Sense where you are. When you go to brush your teeth, before you pick up the brush, you can do it anywhere. So let's try a little more formal check-in. I'm going to start by ringing the bells, and please sit in a position that is conducive to meditation with your back straight, your feet on the floor, your hands at your side, your shoulders relaxed, your head forward, and here we go. Just gently bring your awareness to your body, letting go of your thoughts, coming gently into the body, and noticing whatever there is to feel, anything there is to be aware of. Could be your feet on the floor, sense of aching or tension in the body, sense of fatigue, maybe a sense of energy or joy, sense of relief, maybe temperature change. Clothes may seem tight or loose, whatever it is, just be aware of the body. Notice if your mind has hijacked your attention already and you're in thought. If so, not a problem. Just acknowledge where your mind took you and gently come back to the body. So today I'm going to be talking about, we'll start with what stress is. Okay? Stress is typically thought of as wear and tear on the body. And in years gone by, it used to be thought of as some type of change that's come about. Maybe someone loses a job, or they get divorced, or there's a death in the family, or they're in an accident. This is what usually defined stress as we thought of it. Now, what's happened is that stress has a fight or flight element to it. And back in prehistoric times, that was quite necessary, because if you were being threatened by a tiger, a lion, a bear, well, you needed to do one of two things. You either stay and fight or you would flee, right? You would You would run as fast as you could. Well, that mechanism, that propensity we have for fight or flight is just part of who we are. It will always be there. Now, what's happened is because we don't have the threats that we used to, that element, that factor, that fight or flight propensity, that tendency is still there. It has just shifted over for many people to their emotions and their thoughts, and that emotions and thoughts become perceived as a threat, as a lion or a tiger would be. Now, if you look at most types of stress, they have one thing in common. They tend to be this sense that in some way I am being threatened. And that's what creates the sense of stress in us. So, what could be threatened? Well, it could be our physical well being, it could be our health. You look at being in a time of a pandemic, that's a stressor, right? We are all on some level a little edgy about, my God, do I have the virus? Okay. There's also a sense of status for many people can be a threatening thing. It could be a sense of well-being that feels threatened. Okay. So all types of stressors have this element of there's a threat in one way or the other. Now, what's interesting and really important is that people tend to think that it's the stressor itself that's the threat. It's really not. It's the perception of the situation. It's the perception of the stressor that becomes the threat. So if your perception is different, it may not be that much of a stressor for you. I'll give you a good example. Let's say there are two people who have a flat tire. One person is on the road, they get a flat tire, and they get very upset. They feel overwhelmed. They're not sure what to do. Their blood pressure is going up. They're starting to get angry. They're feeling a little scared and frightened by this. What do I do? What do I do? The other person has a flat tire, and he or she can say, okay, this is what happens. People get flat tires. I'll call AAA. I'll get assistance. I'll call my job. I'll let them know that I'm running late. I got a flat tire, so I'll be in late, no problem. The two people are going to have a very different response to that stressor. And it's not so much the stressor, which is equally the same, it's their relationship to it, it's their perception of it. So that becomes very important. There's some research that shows something really interesting. They find that 80 to 85% of the time, when people go to the doctor, they're going because of a condition that is either caused by stress or exacerbated by stress. Now, 80 to 85% of the time, that is huge. What that tells us is that stress plays a very important role in our life, and for many of us, a very detrimental role. Okay? So also, it turns out that many times people have a lot of fears and negative thoughts of consequences of things happening that create stress in their body, in their mind, affecting their thoughts, their relationships, their emotions. Okay. Now, what's interesting is that the research here shows that many times, matter of fact, most of the time, the things that people fear and the negative thinking they have about some terrible consequence never comes to be. Obviously, that's a good thing. The problem is that we keep generating these false fears and these negative thoughts that are really unwarranted. Wonderful quote for you. Mark Twain said, "I'm an old man and have known a great many troubles, but most of them never happened." It's really a great line. I love it because we all can get sucked into that. And what's interesting is that the fact that he said it talks about it as being basically part of the human experience. We all have it, and we are all predisposed to these vulnerabilities. So, that being the case, I would like to offer a new definition, not in place of, but in addition to the old sense of what stress is, let's have an updated one based on a mindfulness perspective. Here, we're going to think of stress as our inability to accept and come to terms with the present moment as it is. The idea here that I'm putting forth is that most of our moments, we're not accepting what's happening. Either we want to look differently, we want to weigh less, we want more money, we don't like where we are, we want to be someplace else. We're always bothered by something and trying to get into the future to change things, to make everything the way we want it to be. There's little sense of acceptance. And that lack of acceptance of the present moment being what it is creates stress. And in doing so, we are constantly generating more and more stress. I'll give you a wonderful example. A guy I work with was telling me that he was at the end of the day and he was at the elevator, and obviously he needed to go down the elevator into the parking lot to get home and do what he had to do. What was interesting was that because he was practicing mindfulness, he started to pay attention, and as he was waiting for the elevator, he noticed that he wasn't even present. He wasn't there. He was in his head thinking about all the things he had to do and the sense of, I won't be able to get these things done. I don't have enough time tonight. And he could see his stress level going up. He could feel it in his body. That's a wonderful example of how he was not present. And because we don't accept the present moment, there's a consequence. It creates more stress for us. Now, there basically are two ways, two modes that we deal with stress. Either we have a reaction to it or a response to it. Most people are in almost a chronic, constant state of reactivity to things impinging upon them. And the things that impinge upon them are in the way of body sensations, thoughts, feelings, or something externally imposing itself on them, such as watching the news about the pandemic, having to deal with kids and spouses and jobs and everything else going on in our life. Okay? So there's a sense of, I can't deal with this in this moment. So what do? If you are reactive, you tend to have a quick response, a mindless response, and a choiceless response. And the response tends to be based on an exaggerated and a distorted perception of the situation. It tends to be automatic and habitual. I'll give you a wonderful example another guy at work gave me. He said he was leaving work, he was leaving the parking lot, and he was blocked in by a woman who, in front of him, was pulling out, and she was going very slow. And in his mind, he's reacting already. He's getting annoyed with her. He's got this narrative in his head about why she's doing this and what's wrong with her. And he's getting angry and he's got to get home. And eventually she pulled out to the point where he recognized her. And he thought to himself, oh my God, I know her. She's a woman I work with who has cancer. And she's been struggling with the cancer. And despite that, she has had the courage and the strength to still want to go to work each day. And right at that moment when he realized who she was, it shifted things. All of a sudden, he had such compassion for her. He felt bad about himself and that he was honking his horn at her. Okay? And the idea was that he didn't have enough information, but he responded to a lack of information and built a whole story around it that wasn't even true, creating more stress. And when we do get into this reactive mode, we don't have understanding. We don't learn from it because it's habitual. We don't have insight, and there's a lack of acceptance of what's going on. Now, a response to stress is very different. A response to stress speaks to a degree of awareness and acceptance of what's going on, a balanced view of what this is that's happening in this moment. It tends not to be distorted and exaggerated because it's based on what's happening, and it does allow for learning and acceptance of it. Wonderful example of how you can do this. Let's say you are in the car again and something is annoying you. Traffic's starting to build up. And instead of building a narrative around it, you stay with the awareness of what is. And what is that you don't know why there's traffic at this point, but you do know that your body's reacting. You do know that you're starting to build a narrative. You're starting to get annoyed. You could feel it in your chest, maybe in your body somewhere. But instead of building the narrative, you say, okay, there's a sense of uncertainty. My body's reacting to this. I'm just going to stay with things as they are and accept the uncertainty that I don't know why this is happening, but I'm not going to build a story around it. In having this approach, you kind of de-escalate yourself. The stress level doesn't go too high. Traffic probably will let up real soon, and then the body relaxes again. For many people, they build up these stories, and it stays with them longer and longer. I have a wonderful anonymous quote for you. It goes as follows. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. That is a very powerful, valuable piece of information. I'll go over this again. Between stimulus and response, okay, between stimulus, something happens, response is how you deal with it. There is a space, and that space is really time. And the more time you allow between something happening and you responding to it, the more time you allow, the more power you have to choose a response. If you don't allow any time and react right away, kind of like the hot potato thing where you jump right away and you react. If you don't react right away and you sit with it, you be with it, you allow yourself to choose a response. And in that response lies your growth and your freedom. I'll give you a wonderful example. In my mindful eating program, there was a woman who had bariatric surgery. And she had the surgery maybe 25 years ago. She gained back a lot of the weight, and she came to me to learn mindful eating. And in the program, about the sixth session, she came to me and she said that she realized that 70% of the time when she eats, she's not even hungry. That is powerful. That means she could cut back 70% of what she eats in a given day and not even feel hungry. Not starving herself. She's honoring her body then. The point is that by learning the practices that I was teaching, what she did was she created a space between the stimulus and the response. So the stimulus is, I'm hungry. The response is, I'm going to eat. She created a space, and in that space, she started to learn that on many of these occasions, she wasn't even hungry. That knowledge gave her power of choice. It allowed her to grow and gave her a freedom. Therein lies the beauty of these practices. So, I would like to talk a little bit now about healing. Fascinating topic. Jon Kabat-Zinn, who is one of the huge names in mindfulness in this country since the 70s, he really is the one who brought mindfulness into the mainstream of our society. He says that healing is our ability to come to terms with things as they are. He's speaking not so much about a cure, but healing ourselves in the fact that we could accept things. That when we accept things, they simmer down. The reactivity simmers down. Okay. And when we can accept things, we can start to work with them better. Very important thing to do. Just like the people with the tires, right? One guy wasn't accepting it. He was really responding very strongly to it. The other guy was accepting it and acting appropriately, responding appropriately. And it made a huge difference. Okay. I'd like to point out that healing is not just this nice metaphor for what happens with mindfulness practices and cultivating attention. What happens is we literally heal the body. So I'll give you a great example. There's a thing called telomeres in the body, and these are caps on the end of the DNA that protect your chromosomes. And what happens is with time and stress and aging, these caps start to wither away. And when they wither away, we become more vulnerable to illness, disease, and premature death. So to some extent, you can't stop it, but maybe you can slow it down. So they find that people who have greater stress in their life chronically have more erosion of their telomeres. What's interesting is that the research is starting to show that when people meditate, when they practice awareness, they cultivate awareness through meditation, they find that the erosion of the telomeres starts to slow down. If they keep meditating, the erosion stops. And then if they continue to meditate beyond that point, the telomeres start to grow back. So we're literally talking about the body's ability to heal itself. Fascinating stuff. Really interesting. So now what I'd like to do is move on to something a little different and talk about what's called the 8 types of hunger. And I'd mentioned them in the first session. Of these 8 hungers, 6 of them are false, 2 are genuine. Most people tend to align themselves with the false hungers with little awareness of the genuine hungers. So the 6 false hungers are as follows, and you will have a list of this in your handouts. First of all, there is eye hunger. Basically, the idea is that when we see things, especially on TV, all of a sudden we start to think, I'm hungry. I want it, right? Or we go to a bakery and we see it and we want it. It looks good. Now, I always tell people, very importantly, the eyes don't want to eat. All they want to do is see. They don't care about eating. But we take it to this other level that it's really not meant to be. That's eye hunger. Nose hunger, as you can imagine, is the smell of food. So if you go into a bakery and you smell it, all of a sudden you want it. Okay? Thirdly is mouth hunger, the idea that when you taste something and it tastes good, all of a sudden you want to eat it. Okay, it's not genuine hunger. It's not your body saying it's hungry. It's you saying, I like this. It tastes good. I want more of it. Okay? Ear hunger, the sound of a sizzling steak, the sound of popcorn, or maybe it's the sound of someone talking to you about a restaurant they went to. They're describing the meal and how they loved it, and you start to feel hungry for that dish. Okay, it's false hunger. You're being duped. Okay. Next one is mind hunger. Mind hunger basically means that we have thoughts in our heads that tell us things about food. Many of us have between 50 and 70,000 thoughts a day. Okay. Now, many of those thoughts relate to food. And we tend to be very obedient to our thoughts. We don't question them. They tell us something, we believe it hook, line, and sinker. And many times people are commanded by their thoughts to eat, and it's really false hunger. Your mind telling you something is not genuine hunger. It's not a physiological hunger. Okay? Next is heart hunger. And the idea here is that when you have emotions, people eat because of their emotions and their inability to manage them in any other way. Okay? Called emotional eating. We all know that. Comfort food. Now, the issue is, and this is very important to know, that when your heart is hurting for some reason, if you have a sadness, if you're scared, if you're anxious, what your heart is saying is that it needs your attention. So, for instance, if a little boy scrapes his knee, goes to his mother crying, what does he want from the mother? He wants her attention more than anything. He doesn't want to be alone. He wants her attention. He wants the comfort of her attention. It's the same thing here. When you have emotions, it's your body, it's your heart, it's your soul's way of saying, I need you. I need your presence. And that simmers things down. That's where the comfort lies. To eat because of an emotion is kind of like calling a plumber when you need a dentist. There's a mismatch there. One's never going to be able to meet the need of the other. Okay? So now we have the 6 false hungers. What are the 2 genuine hungers that most people are missing, that they really don't pay attention to? One is called stomach hunger. Okay? It's the message you get from your stomach, from your gut. It tells you when it's growling, when it's aching, when it's hollow. Okay? That's when it's giving you information as to whether or not you should eat. And for some people, they are so disconnected from their bodies because they live their life in their heads, they don't know that. So it becomes very important to start to cultivate an awareness of the body. And we do that with the formal meditation. And we do that with a number of other practices that I've been teaching. Okay? The other way, the other type of genuine hunger is called cellular hunger. It's the sense that your whole body is giving you information. So if you are dehydrated, you can tell. You can notice it on your lips, okay? You may get a little groggy. You may get tired, okay? When you need protein, you don't have enough energy in your body will tell you, okay? So it's a matter of developing an awareness to be aligned with your body, to honor your body, and make decisions about eating based on stomach hunger and cellular hunger. Now, for many people who have the false hungers, which almost all of us do, it's not a problem if you could take that information and respond appropriately, kind of being a Columbo. So it's taking information in. When you decide you want to eat, check it out. Is it a false hunger? Is it a genuine hunger? Is it a combination of hungers? Because that gives you information. Okay. Is it that something happened a little while ago and you've been upset? Well, that would be emotional hunger. Could it be you saw something on TV? You know, you saw some of these commercials that can really do a job on you with the visuals, make you think, oh, I got to have this, I got to have it, but you had a full meal a half an hour ago. Well, you're really not hungry. And it's not that hard to let go of it when you check in with your body and you realize you're not hungry to begin with. So, that being said, I would like to go on to talk a little bit about thoughts, because thoughts are very important. As it turns out, as I said a little while ago, we have between 50 and 70,000 thoughts a day. To the surprise of most people, 98% of those thoughts are false. That's right. They're either beliefs, they're ideas, they're prejudices, they're misperceptions, they're opinions. Okay? Only 2% are factual and true. But what happens is we get carried away to our own detriment by 98% of those things, and we get scared, we get upset, we get worried, we eat over it, we yell over it, we drink over it, okay? A lot of things happen based on false information. And unfortunately, 70 to 80% of the thoughts most people have are negative as well. So we are in a situation where we really can't trust our thoughts. We have no reason to really believe them all the time as we do. So what's the solution to this? Well, if we can be present and get out of our heads, we're in a better position, because the present moment is not going to mislead you. So A couple of solutions, things you can do, and you will have it in the handouts. First of all, notice if you're off in thought. Are you lost in thought? If you are, come back, get away from these thoughts, okay? Remind yourself when you're bothered about something that thoughts are not facts. 98% of the time, they're not even true. Okay? Remember to bring the attitude of being a scientist to this again. Okay? You just want to take the information in. You don't want to judge it. You just want to take it in and observe it. Okay? You can view thoughts as kind of trains going by. It's like you're sitting at a platform, and each train is a thought. Okay? Most people get on all these trains, and they're bothered by it. Maybe just hang out at the platform and watch what's going on and be all right with it for a while and see what you can learn from it. See what type of thoughts you do have. Okay? You could also ask yourself when you have a thought that bothers you, is it true? Is it 100% true? What evidence do you have to believe it? Is there another way that you could understand this situation? Okay? So there are things you can do. Wonderful line by Jon Kabat-Zinn again. If you don't take your thoughts so seriously, they won't take you so seriously. I'll read it one more time. If you don't take your thoughts so seriously, they won't take you so seriously. The idea here is that we take our thoughts too seriously. We over-identify with them. We get too personal with them. They're just thoughts. Okay? And the idea here is don't get tangled up in your thoughts so much. Let them come, let them go. They're just little blips. If you could start to practice this and not be so emotionally connected to your thoughts, it's a lot easier. It's a lot less stress there. And his wording is beautiful that we do take them so seriously when we really shouldn't. So with that, I would like to end session 2, and I will take any questions that you may have.